Margot Robbie, the famous actress known for her radiant beauty and incredible talent, has always lived under the spotlight. But deep down, she longs for a peaceful life, far from the noise and chaos of Hollywood. The endless events, pressure, and stress have left her feeling drained. She wants to step away from the roles, the flashing cameras, and the glamorous lifestyle to find a quiet place where she can just be herself. No pretending, no meeting anyone's expectations. Montana, with its untouched wilderness and breathtaking scenery, is the perfect escape for her. Towering forests stretch endlessly, crystal clear streams wind through rocky crevices, and majestic mountains seem to touch the sky. The landscape looks like a living painting, both powerful and serene. This is where she hopes to rediscover peace, to relax, reflect, and embrace the stillness within. She dreams of a getaway without noise, without the glitz and glamour, just her and nature, wrapped in quiet solitude, far from the rush of the world. That morning, the soft sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting shimmering patterns on the ground. Margot wrapped herself in a light sweater and walked slowly along a narrow trail in the reserve. Her footsteps were gentle, as if she wanted to blend into the stillness around her. Taking a deep breath, she inhaled the fresh scent of damp earth and pine needles. The cheerful chirping of birds filled the air, creating a soothing melody of the forest. Then a faint sound broke the silence. She stopped, sensing something unusual. A weak, halting whimper came from a nearby bush. Holding her breath, she listened closely. Something, or someone, needed help. Carefully, she stepped forward, parting the thick branches. And then her heart clenched at the sight before her. A tiny bear cub. It couldn't have been more than a few months old. Its soft brown fur was covered in dust, its little legs trembling with exhaustion. Its round, wide eyes held a mix of fear and confusion. Curled up in the grass, it looked so small and helpless, as if searching for warmth that was no longer there. Margot knelt down, a strange feeling welling up inside her. Why did the sight of this tiny bear cub make her heart ache so much? The cub looked at her, its wide, glistening eyes filled with fear, hesitation, but deep inside, a faint glimmer of hope. She slowly reached out her hand, but just as her fingers were inches away, the cub flinched and let out a weak cry. Its eyes were frantic, like it had learned to expect danger. Margot froze. What had it been through? How had it lost its mother? Had poachers hurt it? Or had its mother simply gone off for a moment and would return? A soft breeze rustled through the trees, but it couldn't break the tense silence between them. Margot swallowed hard and spoke in a low, gentle voice, like a whisper on the wind. "It's okay, little one." The cub blinked, still hesitant. It didn't back away anymore, but it wasn't ready to move closer either. Margot understood. Trust wasn't built in an instant. Slowly, she slipped off her thin jacket and edged a little closer, hoping to show she meant no harm. The cub flinched, but didn't run. Carefully, Margot wrapped it in the soft fabric, feeling its small body trembling. At first, it resisted weakly, but as warmth spread through its fur, it began to relax. "There we go, little one," she murmured. "We'll find your mom, okay?" Her voice was soothing, reassuring. The cub stopped struggling. Instead, it curled up against her, its breathing growing steadier. Margot could feel its tiny heartbeat against her chest, a faint but steady rhythm as if it was clinging to life through her. She bit her lip, concern flickering in her eyes. What should she do now? Taking it with her, was that the right choice? What if its mother came back? But if she left, could it survive out here alone? The wind whispered through the trees, but at that moment all Margot could hear was the pounding of her own heart. A hollow feeling settled over her, a wave of unanswered questions swirling in her mind. But one thing was clear. She couldn't turn her back on this tiny creature. She looked up at the vast forest, sensing both its peace and its challenges. She knew she couldn't keep the cub forever, but she had to find its mother before it was too late. That was the only way to return it to the wild where it belonged. Lowering herself to the ground, Margot studied the earth closely. Among the damp mud, faint bear tracks stretched deeper into the woods. Her heart flickered with hope. Could they belong to the mother bear? But just as she was about to move forward, something else caught her eye. Footprints. Human footprints. She held her breath and crouched down, pressing her fingers against the fresh imprint of a large boot. It hadn't been there long, just a few hours at most. A chill ran down her spine. Someone had been here. Who were they? And more importantly, did they have anything to do with the mother bear's disappearance? Margot looked down at the cub in her arms. It was still trembling, its eyes filled with confusion. She felt an unspoken connection to the little creature, as if they shared the same pain, the same loss. If her suspicion was right, if the mother bear had been taken, there was no time to waste. Tightening her grip on her jacket, she took a deep breath and followed the footprints. The Montana sky was clear, but the air grew colder as she ventured deeper into the forest. The dense trees blocked out the sunlight, casting shifting shadows across the ground. Everything was eerily quiet except for the soft crunch of leaves beneath her feet, each step adding weight to the tension building inside her. She couldn't stop now. The mother bear's life and the cub's future depended on what she did next. Then her breath caught in her throat. Up ahead, half buried in the dirt, was a steel trap. Someone had set it here. Margot knelt down, her fingers trembling as she touched the cold metal. It had been triggered. Her eyes darted around, searching for any signs of what had happened. And then, caught on a low-hanging branch, she saw it. A clump of coarse brown fur, adult bear fur. A slow, burning anger ignited in her chest. Poachers. Margot knew Montana had strict wildlife protection laws, but not everyone followed them. She clenched her fists and looked toward the boot prints, her heartbeat hammering as she trailed them through the silent woods. The air around her felt heavy, as if the forest itself was hiding a dark secret. Sunlight pierced through the branches in uneven patches, creating a flickering contrast of light and shadow that only deepened the tension. Then a sharp snap. A twig had broken. Not by her. Margot froze. She pressed herself against a thick tree trunk, holding her breath. She listened. A figure moved up ahead. Peering out cautiously, she spotted a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a camo jacket and a baseball cap. He stood beside an old pickup truck. And in the truck bed, locked inside a heavy steel cage, was the mother bear. Margot's hands curled into fists, fury surging through her veins. The bear was bound tightly, its body trembling with exhaustion, but its wild eyes still burned with defiance. It let out a weak, guttural growl, drained but not broken. There was still fire in its gaze, still the will to fight. Margot's jaw tightened. She wasn't going to let them get away with this. A cold fury spread through Margot's body. She couldn't just stand there, but how could she free the mother bear without being seen? She took a step back, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her chest. No weapons, no plan, and no time. She glanced down at the cub in her arms. It stared back at her, its wide eyes glistening. Margot took a deep breath, her mind racing. She could run for help. But what if by the time she returned, the mother bear was gone? If they took her away, the cub would lose everything. That couldn't happen. Determined, Margot steadied herself. She had no weapons and no way to call for backup. All she had was her own speed and wits. Then, in the distance, she spotted a metal bucket near the base of a tree. An idea sparked. She picked up a small rock and hurled it at the bucket. The loud clang echoed through the trees. The man flinched, snapping his head toward the noise. Thinking he had caught something in a trap, he turned away from the truck and started toward the sound. This was her chance. Margot sprinted to the cage, gripping a rock tightly. She swung it at the padlock. The first strike did nothing. Gritting her teeth, she hit it again, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds, terrified the man would turn back. Her pulse pounded as she saw his shadow shifting in the distance. Then, click, the lock snapped open. Margot swung the cage door wide. The mother bear's eyes locked onto her cub. They lit up instantly. And then, a roar erupted from its throat, a deep, earth-shaking sound that sent shivers down Margot's spine. The bear lunged, shaking with fury, and with one powerful blow, the cage door flew open. Freed! The mother bear let out another deafening roar. The man just steps away from his truck froze, his face drained of color. Then, in pure panic, he spun on his heel and bolted. His gun slipped from his hands as he stumbled, cursing under his breath before disappearing into the trees. Margot took a cautious step back, heart hammering. But to her surprise, the mother bear didn't charge at her. Instead, she rushed to her cub, nudging it, checking for injuries. The cub let out tiny, happy cries, nuzzling against its mother's fur. Margot exhaled, finally letting the tension slip from her shoulders. They were safe. Margot let out a shaky breath, her heart still pounding like a drum. Then the mother bear turned and looked at her. It lasted only a second, but the moment was powerful enough to root Margot in place. Was it gratitude? A warning? She couldn't tell. But one thing was certain. She had saved the mother bear and her cub from a battle that could have ended very differently. She didn't move, not even an inch. She knew that one wrong move, one misstep could make the bear see her as a threat, and that would be the end of it. But something in the mother bear's eyes had changed. They weren't wild with rage anymore. Margot gazed into the deep, dark pools of its stare and felt something strange, a quiet understanding. She didn't know if the bear truly recognized what had happened, but in that moment, it felt like it did, like it knew she had helped. And in its own way, it was saying thank you. A warm, unfamiliar feeling spread through Margot's chest. Then, without hesitation, the mother bear gently nudged her cub forward. It was time to leave. Margot watched as they disappeared into the forest, their steps slow and deliberate, as if savoring the simple joy of being together again. The cub, trailing closely behind, turned back one last time, its eyes lingering on her before vanishing into the trees. Standing there, watching them fade into the wild, Margot felt something she hadn't in years. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anxiety. It was peace. A quiet satisfaction filled her. Not the kind that came from applause or flashing cameras, but something deeper. Something real. She had done something that mattered, not for fame or recognition, but because it was right. Because in that moment, she had felt a connection to something far bigger than herself. And then it hit her. This trip wasn't just about escaping Hollywood. It was about finding herself. All the stress, the pressure, the endless expectations, it all felt distant now, like a life that belonged to someone else. Out here in the heart of Montana, she had finally found the stillness she had been searching for. This wasn't just a vacation. It was a journey back to who she really was. She smiled to herself, turned, and walked away, not hurried, not restless, but calm. At peace. And as she stepped forward, the vast Montana wilderness seemed to welcome her home.